Welcome to the Conscious Word. My name is Van Stripling, and I am your host. And we are here today with entrepreneur, speaker, and author Dennis Dotson. You have a new book out. This is actually your second book.
Yes, sir.
You have a new book out, and Damaged Goods: How to Break Through Your Brokenness. This is really an interesting title, coming from a man, a brother. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
This is not something we normally hear or talk about when it comes to men. This is something we normally associate with women. So, Damaged Goods: How to Break Through Your Brokenness. Tell me a little bit about this book.
Yeah. So, I had to be honest with me, and then I realized that I had some abandonment issues of my past. My father left when I was 2, and throughout life, I met a lot of people grew up without their father. I'm not the only one. My story is not that unique. However, it affected me. It affected me. I remember going to basketball games, and I would see other kids whose dad was there cheering, and then I would realize, like, why I don't have that? Why I don't have a daddy in the audience cheering? I used to like when I saw my buddies' fathers like yelling at them, like they would get in trouble. I'd be like, yeah, I like that, because I never had that. And I talk about in this book how every boy and every child really needs to be able to measure himself against his father. So imagine not having that. Imagine living a life where, though there are male figures around, you still don't have the ability to, you don't know why you hold your hands the way you hold them. You don't know why you walk the way you walk. You don't know why you talk the way you talk.
Right.
It rips away a level of confidence that you should have, as a boy. So, Damaged Goods, I realized that in my relationship, never being taught how to be a man, never being taught how to be a husband for sure, being that I had these abandonment issues, I was doing two things. I was either pulling relationships really close, or I was pushing them away, right? And I'm talking about away to the point where you couldn't penetrate my world at all. And in my marriage, that became part of it too.
And so let's be clear. I've known you for a long time.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
We have a long relationship, and I'm familiar with your energy. I'm familiar with your drive. I'm familiar with your creativity and your strive as an entrepreneur. You've said some incredible things about this book and how you got to this point. So I want to touch on a few of those things.
Sure.
And I wanted to highlight something really quickly that you said, is that you mentioned therapy.
We all are somewhat damaged, right? Because we all have our childhood experiences or our childhood traumas that we go through. And what happened is, at the point of my divorce, I was faced with having to look at me. I couldn't blame anybody. I got into my house and nobody was there. My kids were gone, and I was forced to now come to the grips of things that I had done. And and I was forced to now say, why was that? Why was my behavior this way for so long? And then when I talked to the therapist, it was funny because she asked me a question. She said, Dennis, who do you have in your life that tells you when you're wrong? And I was like, I don't have anybody in my life that tells me when I'm wrong. She was like, well, that's because you created it like that. I said, no. I said, I just don't have anybody that tells me when I'm wrong. She said, well, it's because you created it. And I said, listen, I have nobody in my world. I don't know why, but people don't tell Dennis when he's wrong. She said, Dennis, do you see what you're doing right now? That's why. I was like, whoa. When she did that to me, she helped me see the things that I was doing was toxic. I created this environment, and there was a reason why I was doing that. And I didn't know there was a reason, but it was because when you tried to correct me, right, you're pulling my mask off that I put up. Like, no one wants their mask pulled off.
Right, right.
There's nothing better, really, and it's freeing when you take the mask off yourself. You say, you know what, you're right. I'm tripping.
Right.
So.
Right. And I've talked about that before, that typically we go into relationships in one or two ways, with our masks on or our masks off. The problem with going into relationships with our masks on is that eventually, sometime in that relationship, if it lasts long enough, and sometimes that's not until we get married, that you take the mask off. And what you leave your partner with now is trying to learn and discover who this new person is.
You know, what's interesting is the me that I was projecting, there's no way that even she, and I talk about it in the book, there's no way that she would even have known, because I didn't know either. You know, so we get married in a lot of times we don't even know who we are at the time. I got married when I was 21 years old. Right. And so I didn't discover myself until 36. Right. So just, you know, she was with a man that she knew nothing about because he didn't know himself. Right. Again, we have to go backwards and look at adverse childhood experiences. That's a therapy word. So, you know, adverse childhood experiences or childhood trauma. You have to look at that. Like, you know, the me that I've created, right? It's to protect this vulnerability, or protect this sensitive part of my life, right? The fact that I grew up without a father. I remember, and we're about to go a little bit. I remember laying in my bed. I've never told this story either. I remember laying in my bed. I had this bunk bed. I don't even know why I had a bunk bed, because I was the only boy in the room. I mean, my sister had her own room, but I had a bunk bed for some reason. And the box spring was, at the bottom of it was wood, right? And I actually remember, this is so crazy. I remember laying in the bottom bunk, and I had wrote on all of those little planks on that mattress, I had wrote, like, I want a dad.
Really?
Over every my mom don't even know this. I wrote on all those planks that I wanted a dad. And I look at it, you know, like, what is that? Why is that? And I craved father figure, and without having that example, then we jump into these relationships. Nobody who told you how to conduct yourself as a man? Right. Who told you? You just picked up what you thought was right from here, from there, from the streets, from this person, things that you thought were good. And then if you had a mother, single mother, she's doing the best she can. She's trying to discover herself too. She's dating. You know, I talk about an experience with my mom where she was dating this guy, came home, and he was there. And my testosterone was so high at the time. I think I was 14, 15. And I'm just going off on this guy. I did not like him. For no reason. This dude was swole up, wearing tank tops, and he looked like a fake R&B singer, right? And I just didn't like his masculinity in my house, because I didn't even know where to put it. For sure.
And what I think is interesting about that, because as you said earlier, you wrote on those slats, I want a dad. Yeah. But you never gave him the ability to even become that.
Let me tell you something.
Or did you allow any man to become that?
Very good question. So I'll tell you that it's almost, if that happens in a child's life, that is a huge blessing. If they get a stepfather or a mentor that can step in and actually penetrate those walls. Because at 13, 14, 15 years old, I was taking on this man role. Right. I was taking it on. Right. And so long story short, I pushed back on that. I came into the house, and my sister remembers this. I'm cussing this guy out. I'm going off. If you were an authority figure and coming into my life where I never had authority figure, you got to push back.
So did you never had a relationship with your father at all, or
no.
Was it a sparse relationship?
I went to Michigan when I was 16. I remember seeing him. We got in a fight, not a bad fight. It was because I was testing him. He was testing me too. I could tell. And then later when I was 18, but now my dad lives with me. Isn't that crazy?
That's real crazy. So I want to talk about something you said about, when I think about this title, Damaged Goods.
Yes.
Essentially, you went into the marriage already damaged.
Of course.
Right. So let's talk about that. Yeah. Let's talk about, because I think it's important, because I don't think a lot of times when we have bad adult relationships, we tend to blame or associate our brokenness to that particular relationship.
Of course we do.
And we never go back to the first relationships that we have. And the reality is our first relationships are with our mothers and our fathers, present or absent.
Very true.
So let's talk about that part of your life and how that became the Dennis Dotson going into your marriage.
So what's interesting is you have to know that anytime you come together with somebody, you're both coming with baggage, right? And you're unloading that baggage over time. Right. None of that baggage comes all out. You don't come into a relationship and say, okay, This is all my issues.
Right,
Right?
right.
But you unload it over time.
Well,
And
we're afraid that they can't take it all at one time.
But watch this. That's very true. Let's add to that. A lot of times we don't even know what's in that bag ourselves.
That's a great
So
point.
I can't pull it out if I don't know it's there.
That's a great point. So in your journey to writing this book,
Yeah.
you talk about your self-discovery,
Yeah.
your discovery of self, right? On that journey, what would you say probably was the most pivotal turning point for you in your discovery? What was that real aha moment for you in your discovery?
The aha moment for me was actually finding out where it all came from. Like once I realized and I was able to start studying on abandonment, I said, oh, and everything started making sense, because then I could actually modify my behavior. I do hate when people say it is what it is, right?
Right.
Because you can change, right?
Right.
But so there's some things that are good, but there's certain things in you that are toxic that you should change, right? If you're not getting the results out of life or in relationships or whatever, and it's because of you, well, and most people won't even recognize that it's because of you.
Right. We have a hard time accepting our own flaws sometimes.
But we have to.
Right. As Black men, a lot of times we're taught that it's not masculine for us to seek therapy.
Sure.
You know, in the Black community, you know, we've always turned to the church or turned to family when we have issues and things of that nature. So what was it that led Dennis to say, "Oh, I need to go to therapy"?
You have those moments where you realize that there's something off, something's not right, like not just the abandonment, right? Not just those issues where you're discovering why you acting like that. Not that. It's like not being able to solve it yourself, right? So I started going through a real depression. I don't know if anybody ever been through depression, but for me, it was so real. And I learned later that depression is like fear or regret of the past, and anxiety is fear of the future. So I was dealing with both of those at the same time. So that said, you go into this depression. My mom is worried. My sister is worried. Everybody's watching me from a distance. They're like, yo, he's different. Something's going on. I got my brother James saying, hey, I need to hook up. We got to pray. I got you calling. I got everybody kind of worried about, you know, my current state of mind. Because my current state of mind was not healthy.
Okay.
It was not healthy. And I just knew that I needed to get out of that, because winning is always part of my DNA. Like, I don't want to lose. I'm not going to lose. I got to figure out what I need to do to win. And so even though we're never taught as Black men to talk about our stuff, and I realized that I wasn't about to go to the church. I wasn't about to do that. I actually felt like I needed psychological. I felt like something was just off in my vibe, you know. So I'm always a positive guy. I'm always projecting positivity. I feel like that. At least I've always been the guy to encourage everybody. But in moments like that, I honestly will say, I don't think that there are any words that can encourage you. You actually need to problem solve. It's like, no, I need to fix what's going on. Don't try to hype me up and say everything's gonna be all right. No, it ain't gonna be all right if I don't change. Right? If something don't fix, it ain't gonna be right, you know? And so that's what drove me to say, you know what, let me pick up this phone.
I have to say this because I think it's important for the viewers to understand something.
Okay.
What I did not say in the introduction is that you're also a law enforcement officer.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we touch on that just a little bit, because what you were going through, you went through as a law enforcement officer, correct?
Correct.
And going into that depression, you're still a law enforcement officer, correct? Okay. Now you're in a different mind state. And with all of the issues going on with law enforcement today, the importance of therapy.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And that sense of discovery through therapy.
Sure.
I just wanted to touch on that because I think it's important for the audiences to understand that you sought therapy, you know, at a time in your life when, while you had left for a short period of time, because you're back in law enforcement now,
Correct.
is that that journey is a part of, or that part of your life is a part of your journey?
I think 95% of police officers deal with PTSD.
Wow.
I think majority of police are dealing with PTSD.
Wow.
And not just a little bit, but it's just not natural to see the things that you see. A baby being dismembered on the highway from an accident, or shooting, or your adrenaline going so high, having to fight in a situation for your life. You know, that's not natural to do ongoing. And then in the life of a law enforcement officer, here you go. Not only do you do one call like that, your next call may be the same way. Your next call, but watch this. This is where you get a lot of officers who mess up, because we engage with high adrenaline on one call, and then when you're done with that call, guess what you got to do? You got to go answer another call. What if that adrenaline is not way up there, but your adrenaline still is, but that call doesn't require that. So now, mentally, emotionally, having to wind that back, that's a skill that is not taught in law enforcement. Like, how do I wind down? In my opinion, after an officer has something major that takes place on a call or whatever, he sees something like that, he should be able to go for the day. You don't want that officer showing up to your house. You don't want him. He just had this situation, send him home. Give me somebody fresh.
Right.
You know, so we're looking at a lot of issues like that.
And I just wanted to touch on that, because I think it's important for all of us to understand the importance of therapy in that manner as well.
Yeah, for sure.
How to break through your brokenness.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know everybody's breakthrough is going to be different, right? So what was Dennis's breakthrough? What is the breakthrough for Dennis?
The breakthrough is definitely the accepting of the reality, right? And once I accepted it, I will say that this is probably the happiest, the most freeing that I've ever been in my whole life.
Okay.
Just because now I can walk into any room, right, as me. Because we live our lives putting these masks on. I have a chapter in here called Band-Aids and Vices.
Okay.
Right? Because a lot of people, we live with Band-Aids, we're just kind of sweeping it under the rug, or with these vices, where be it sex, be it drugs, be it food, be it work. Your vice could be anything, right? But we're doing that to fill these voids that we've had over time. Once you kind of accept where you are, right, and you can start doing the right things to fill it with healthy things, because habits are never broken, right? They're replaced. You got to replace these habits that we've created over time. We've filled ourselves with relationships. Like I think back, since I was maybe 14 years old, I always had a girlfriend. I always was in a relationship. I've never been single until now. Wow. Like literally. Right?
And I know a lot of people like that.
Yeah, like relationship to relationship. And it's because you're filling a void. Once you start acknowledging and accepting, it's a breakthrough.
So what was the toughest chapter for you to write in this book?
Probably chapter number 1, everything starts with you.
Okay.
Everything starts with you.
Okay. And why was that such a difficult chapter for you?
Because that's the one that you have to first deal with you. You have to first start talking about that brokenness. Now going into it, actually talking about the things that trigger you, like really diving into the real you. See, you can't fake that part. You can't fake that part. You can act like you're trying to go there.
We lie to ourselves.
We lie to ourselves all the time,
right?
We do, right? But when you really want to get to the place that I'm in right now, you refuse to lie to you, right? And if you really want good results out of people, don't lie to yourself. Okay,
but that's difficult for people, right? Because no one ever wants to admit their flaws, right?
True.
So how did you get to the point of being honest with yourself? So because I think that's important, right? So the breakthrough is great, but something had to get you there, right? How did you get to that point to where you could be honest with yourself?
I think for everybody it's different, but I will say that most people have to hit a rock bottom.
There we go.
You gotta hit a rock bottom before, and most of us men, we definitely have to hit rock bottom before we even are able to recognize anything, right? Same with an addict on the street, they're not really ready to go into recovery until they've hit rock bottom, right? And so it's the same in your emotional health or your emotional intelligence or your mental health. It's the same thing.
Right.
You know?
Okay. So now that we're here, okay, now this is the rebuilding process, right? Because getting through your brokenness, and there's a rebuilding process that has to happen, right? How does that rebuilding process now of Dennis play into your everyday life, right? We know how you got here, but now there's a life forward that has to happen, right? That's relationships, that's business, that's potentially being married again, your relationship with your children,
Sure.
right? How does the rebuilding of this new Dennis through your discovery, how does that play into your life now going forward?
So number one, I really think that creating this dialogue period is already healthy, and it is part of my now normal conversation, right? I told you guys a while back that for me, I always knew that humility just smelled better, right? So I want to walk in the room humble. As I create this conversation in itself is humbling, right? And I think that it makes us all better because when I talked to the therapist, Crystal Dotti, who wrote a lot in this book as well, in each chapter there's therapist notes at the end of each chapter. Okay. She said she's never heard a black man talk about this stuff. So everyday life, moving forward, we're gonna continue the conversation. We're gonna talk about it because I want for my children to know. I want for other men who have grew up without their father. I want for them to be thinking and look at certain things like if they're living their life a certain way and they're not getting the results that they want, man, you may want to dive back and figure out where you learned that behavior. If you're a single mother, you're raising kids without that father present, understand the things that they're probably going through. Understand that there are certain things that we're just wired a certain way connected to our father. If you've ever been depressed, if you've ever been through anxiety, you had anxiety issues, see, I want you to read this book so you can realize that there is a journey to get through it. There is a journey. Look at this guy. He went from here to here, right? And am I where I want to be yet? No. I'm not all the way, right? I'm not all the way whole. But if you go into chapter 7, it talks about where the areas in life that we are trying to be whole in, right? So that's an everyday process. So my everyday is trying to create this dialogue, provide the tools through this book, and continue to just kind of talk about it, you know?
And so I know this journey will definitely lead you to better relationships, better friendships, and obviously breaking the cycle too of becoming a better father.
See, I want fathers to stay. I'm gonna tell you this real quick. I know we're about to wrap it up,
go ahead.
but I want for fathers who, just because your relationship with that mother didn't work, you stay. Right. If you've left, go back. Go back to those kids. You don't have to go back to the mom, but you need to go back to those kids.
Right, absolutely.
Because they need you. The boy, the man child that's in there, if you've had a son, me being who I am, I'm telling you for a fact, he needs you. He's measuring himself in this world he don't have a compass. He's trying to figure things out on his own, right? And you're leaving that up to chance. And so here it is now. We have all of our young men fatherless, right? Lack of confidence. Just think of it. They don't have the direction that they need. And so they're grabbing it and creating these toxic relationships because they have these issues too.
Right.
I'm sure of it. Right. I'm not guessing on this. I'm sure of it.
Right.
That without that father present, we don't recognize how powerful the sound of the dad's voice in the house is. How powerful it is to be able to watch your dad maneuver. I know a lot of guys who grew up with their father, right? And you can just see the difference in those men versus the men who don't have fathers, right? I see it. And so if you have left your children, go back to those children, right? If you grew up without your dad, just know that there is a process to getting through it. And if you're a single mom and you're trying to raise children, look, allow this book to give you some insight. I talk about some things that my mom did unconsciously. She didn't know that she was doing it, right? There's no way that she would have known because she's an adult. She has her own emotional issues that she's going through. She doesn't realize by saying you're just like your daddy, Right? She don't realize that because he's absent. I don't know where he is. And I've created this image of him, right? This image that I created is a heroic image. And every time you talk against that picture, it doesn't bring me closer to you. You know what it does?
Right.
It pushes me away.
Pushes me away.
Right. So
Absolutely.
watch this. So now not only is dad missing, but you're also missing.
Yeah. Yeah. I have my own personal experiences like that as a child, growing up with divorced parents. And I can definitely attest to as a young male growing up how my mother's conversation about my father played into my feelings towards my mother.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And it created unpleasant feeling towards my mother.
And they don't know that.
Yeah.
The mothers don't know it because they're just living life, going through they're just living life, right? They don't know that that's affecting boys like that.
Right.
But it really is one of those things where you're tearing down an image that I created. I worked hard to create this fake image.
Right.
I even talk about it in the book where I always thought that my dad was buying me gifts. I always thought that he was buying me all these gifts, everything that my mom would brought in the house, the stuff that she was working for. I was like, yeah, my dad got me that.
Wow. Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you got to check this book out. Again, Damaged Goods, How to Break Through Your Brokenness. Make sure you check this book out. Dennis, brother, it has been a pleasure.
Thank you, my brother.
Thank you for coming out and having this conversation
Thank
with
you,
me. It is so important that we as men, men in general, but specifically us as black men, not only understand who we are, but we understand more about the brokenness that we may be dealing with from our childhood, and begin to discover ourselves.
Powerful.
And I have to say that I'm extremely proud of you.
Thank you.
I've known you for a while. I have seen you do a lot of great things, but I have to admit that I'm most proud of this book.
Wow, thank you.
I'm most proud of this book. And so, brother, I just wish you the best going forward.
I appreciate it.
And go share this book with the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.